up and sit down.
Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast with your hosts, Tim and Carter.
What's trending, Enrichers? Carter Wilcoxson, founder of CSI Financial Group here, with my co-host and former wealth advisor, Tim James, founder of
ChemicalFreeBody.com and your new health advisor. This is the show where we reveal the connection between physical and financial abundance.
Hey, welcome back, Enrichers. Carter Wilcoxson coming to you live from end of summer Phoenix, Arizona, which if you've ever been out to Phoenix, Arizona, you know why I'm saying that. The end of summer starts creeping into the fall and the winter, which is our season out here in Phoenix, Arizona. And we had a crazy monsoon last night. I'm joined, as normal, by my co-host, Mr. Chemical Free Body himself, Tim James. Timmy, how are you, my man?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. It's a little smoky out here in Eastern Oregon. We got a lot of fires. I'm very blessed to have my air purification system running 24/7.
For sure.
And what's cool about it is not only do I get mountain fresh air 24/7, 365, but it's also very good for smoke, which is good, which we got a lot right now. Like, I can't even see the other mountain range right now. It's so smoky. We have there's one fire over here. It's like 140,000 acres. And it's just right there's.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. And I want to go ahead and bring in our guest plural today, which is unusual. We don't always have, guests that come in. Normally our advisors are, single individual advisors out there working in their own practice. But I have a husband and wife duo, which I'm very excited to bring in. We have Pamela and Pam, I'm going to chop up your last name, and Dyalekt, who is an educator by trade, and they are a husband and wife duo in Brooklyn, New York. Pam and Dyalekt, very nice to have you on today.
Thank you. Such a wild and tumultuous day. We're here talking about health and wealth. We come in talking about monsoons and firestorms. I feel like it's going to be a lot.
Well, sure. Yeah. Hopefully it's not fire and brimstone, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. No. We're not talking about taxes today.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, hey, we're very excited to have you on today. Brooklyn, New York, I've never been to, so I might ask you a few questions about, your community and your area and everything, since I've never really been there. But let's go ahead, as we normally do on this podcast, we want to get a sense of what really brought you into the financial services business, to have a heart for like helping people and Dyalekt, you're an educator, by trade and everything. And, but let's go ahead and start with you, Pam, if you don't mind. Let's talk a little bit about, what your path sort of looked like. What was the infancy stage, if you will, of having that direction that led you to being a financial advisor?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It has been a long and winding road, let me tell you. I actually have a literature degree. Surprise! I had no idea I was going to do finance or be interested in it at all when I started college. And in school, I was teaching kids about budgeting and saving and starting their own businesses and the stock market and buying a house, all of these things. I was like 19, 20, and no one had ever taught this to me. My parents didn't know to teach this to me. And I feel like so many of us get thrust into adulthood. You cross this line where there's this expectation that now you know everything about money, right? And so this concept of money camp and teaching kids this young really opened my eyes to this whole world that I didn't understand. And I figured a lot of other people to understand. So I graduated from UC Santa Barbara, and I moved to New York, and I decided that I really wanted to pursue this. So I had contacted a wealth management firm, and I asked if he had any job openings, and I really just got my foot in the door doing operations there. And that's really the beginning of my career in wealth management. During this time, me and another money camp counselor actually started writing a financial literacy curriculum. She was a teacher, and she and I were teaching these camps together, and we looked at each other and we were like, oh my gosh, this needs to be in every school in America, right? And so we started a company called Pockets Change, actually, which is where Dyalekt comes in. And we wrote this 200, 300-page curriculum for kids, for teachers to teach. We brought it to this 6,000 teacher conference, and we didn't sell a single one.
I mean, the conference did steal the workshop.
They did. The next year,
we were both presenting separately, and they stole their workshop and my workshop. It's great.
Good times. Wow. So that was really like wealth management plus writing this curriculum was like my career for the first 5 years. And one thing that I found as I moved into a financial planning role and started working with clients directly is that I was learning all of these things, and I couldn't take on my friends as clients. And people would ask me questions. I get asked questions at parties. We're part of a pretty big artist community, and I couldn't help them through my wealth management job. And so I remember sitting around a fire pit with a friend one day, and she said, "Pam, I really need your help, but I'm so afraid to look." And I said, "Do you want to do it over brunch or something?" And literally, I kid you not, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, like a brunch and budget?"
Our community is very illiterate.
Yeah. And so I started trading food for advice. I would ask people to take me out to brunch or make me a meal, and we would talk about their finances. And Brunch and Budget was very literally like us sitting down, sharing, breaking bread, finding common ground, and having these really difficult conversations around money that people are really ashamed to have. And that's really the foundation of Brunch and Budget. And Dyalekt and I have actually been podcasting since 2014 with a
budget, and she really enjoyed the way that Pam rocked. I've been telling Pam for years that she was an artist. We weren't sure what kind. I was like, "Well, you're a finance artist. You're part of our whole thing." And she said, "You should have a show, Pam." And Pam was like,
"No."
Eventually, they got her to say yes, but she said, "Well, I got to bring Dyalekt because music and sound and twisting the knobs and doing the stuff." So I was thinking, I do know music and I can host and I can do that part, and I am an educator. So, I'm going to play like a Ed McMahon role where I'm just like, "Yes, oh, wow, that's interesting," and stuff like that. But I quickly realized that I not only had opinions as an educator, but as a lifetime artist. A lot of the topics that Pam brought up where, we were talking about this earlier, artists are kind of the canary in the coal mine when it comes to a lot of financial inequity, a lot of ways that they trick workers. So I realized that I had a wealth of experience to bring to these things. I was the prototypical starving artist that everybody taught us that we should take any money that we get in cash and not report it on our taxes so that we can get low health insurance and we can get this, that, and the other thing. And I was in all these financially disadvantageous positions because I was taught that as artists, we have to do this weird, humble game and wait for someone to pluck us from obscurity. And that's how we become successful, even though all that's a lie. And unraveling that lie was really helpful for our community of artists and people who are looking for those types of change. At the same time, so my education works. I'm a hip hop MC, and I began working as an educator, I think around 2003. I was just invited in to be a guest for some poetry performance, and I noticed how, while it's fun to do a rap for a bunch of drunk people in a club, they're bouncing up and down and whatever, it was so much more impactful to hear an 8-year-old say, "So in the second poem, in the third stanza, you were talking about this," like the depth of understanding. It meant a lot to me, and it showed me the path that I wanted to take as a creative and the ways that I could help people. I initially, because, parents, they want you to be in a more stable position. I was supposed to go into law, and I was working in law and doing my thing. I was a copy operator in this law firm, like Pam, just starting off in the spot I can. I was working my way up. I was getting little paralegal duties, and then the lawyers I was working for represented the police officers who shot Amadou Diallo. This was like 2002. Yeah. 2001 or 2. Was this immigrant who shot like 50 times by the police. Oh, no, it was 41 nation space where we can use not just the art itself, but the reasons behind the art to be able to share with students that they're not wrong, they're not stupid, they're not alone. They can get through these things the same way we did or in their own paths. Basically Singapore math, but for everything. So I've been working for about 10, 15 years as a hip hop educator. When I came upon the work that Pocket Exchange was doing, they were offered a job prep workshop. Yeah, so we were working with the foster care program, and we were doing financial literacy workshops, and the program director was like, "Do you do job prep?" And of course we said yes, even though we had no job prep program. But I'd known from his education work that he actually had a hip hop based job prep and career prep program
So we brought him in as a guest teacher that year.
Yeah, I had just done back home in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, a really like big kind of island-wide. We called it the debate, and the debate is a Lincoln Douglas debate, but it's done through poetry and rhyme. Your opening argument is a poem. You learn how to do a freestyle rap for your rebuttals. You're spitting rhymes to beats as your conclusion. And the thing of it is, there's a lot of great social emotional stuff that's going on, getting confidence, public speaking, working with people. But the real work of it, and this is what I really love about the whole artistic process when you apply it to practical things, is they're learning how to research. They were learning how to code switch. They were learning how to look somebody in the eye, and when they give them a challenging question, to flip it back on them. So after we went through the whole process and we rocked and we did the show and the debate, and it was a lot of fun, we flipped it on and said, hey, so y'all know you just learned how to get a job anywhere, right? And then we flipped the outfits for the show, for the suits for the interview, and the debate for the mock interview. And they were able to take the things that they use for research and writing to create their cover letters and their resumes and build through there.
Yeah, so the program director basically said, you're not allowed to come back without him. And that was really the spark to create programming for Pocket Change around hip hop and finance and bringing those two pedagogies together. And I feel like, what's been really interesting bringing those two things together, particularly the Pocket Change, is one of the reasons why the program director reacted that way was because she didn't know that the kids she's been working with for years were creative in any way. She didn't know that they wrote poems. She didn't know they drew. She didn't know they did art. She didn't know that, that they wrote songs and things like that. And so putting those together and really giving kids a place to find their identity and then to find their financial identity within that and understand their relationship with money through things they were familiar with and through things that made them feel like themselves was a really huge part of how we connect personal finance and make it relevant to youth.
Money is such an emotional thing out because we don't talk about these things in regard to money. We talk about what we should do. We talk about best practices. We talk about percentages. But you know this in health, right? You can talk all day long about the right stuff, but one, our bodies are really divergent. So what works for you may not work for me, and our minds are similar. And also, if it doesn't feel good to me, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And what's most worth it is that you find the thing that's going to inspire you. Make sure that you actually do it.
Well, let me just jump in here because this is really cool. If you don't mind, and normally, we have these different segments, but I have a feeling the first segment and second segment are going to intertwine with one another.
Whoosh.
Let's smush it all.
But if you don't mind, I've read your bio, the listenership, which is very diverse, by the way, of the Health and Wealth Podcast. Talk a little bit about specifically what Pocket Exchange is, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So Pocket Exchange is online and in-person workshops for youth, for educators, and for parents. I say all of these because the intergenerational approach is really important to us. Pocket Exchange is about changing the way, like our tagline is, let's change the way we talk about finance. I was just saying before that, one, we don't really talk about finance. We don't talk about finance with our kids. There's studies that talk about how parents would rather talk to their kids about terrorism and sex and drugs than talk about money. Similarly, we don't talk about finance with our peers in any situation in circles. There's the salary stuff that is either outright not allowed or is considered taboo in these places. And then our families, we've been in workshops where teachers have been like, well, how do we get these kids to not do the bad habits of their parents? And we're like, whoa, we're not trying to cause a rift in the family here. None of us were taught these things. So what Pocket Exchange finds really important is using these intergenerational workshops and several touch points to get students to understand their relationship with money so they can forgive themselves for all of the stuff that people tell us that we're supposed to do. And POC is, POC is people of color or like racialized people.
People of the global majority,
Yeah, there are a lot of terms.
People of culture too, yeah.
I'm generally talking about non-white people who are not white.
Yeah, well, and that's why I wanted you to divulge that, if you will. Don't keep it.
My bad. Yeah. So when it comes to Pocket Exchange, is we do represent a diverse group of people. One of the important things about Pocket Exchange that I did not mention earlier is just like we talk about artists being the canary in the coal mine, we talk a lot about the racial wealth divide and its impact over a diverse population. I focus heavily on anti-Blackness in America because that is the cultural root of a lot of the financial inequality that goes on in America. And one of the interesting and important things that we do with the artivism, and the creativity that's involved in Pocket Change is understanding these cultural roots that come from art that have put us in the boxes now that we look to break ourselves out of. So when we talk about money, we have to talk about the racial wealth divide, because the racial wealth divide is something that impacts all of us in really amazing and kind of terrifying ways. One I recently learned is that you can thank having to pay a security deposit on anti-Blackness. And I mean everybody. This is a thing that was created. It used to be before the Reconstruction that you could pay your rent till the end of the month. And
because that's how you earned money, right? You earned money throughout the month, so the rent was due at the end of the month.
Oh, and security deposits were illegal and considered an immoral thing. But then after Reconstruction, there were individuals who didn't want Black people to be able to live with them. So they gave them harder rules. Yeah. They were like, and you're familiar with this kind of, post-Reconstruction stuff where they're like, okay, we'll give you this little barrier. You got to pay by the first of the month. And people, being ingenuitive, were able to do it. And they're like, oh, man, they got it. Well, you know what? Now you got to pay too. And the thing that's so fascinating and terrifying is for all backgrounds, now that's the case. It doesn't matter if you're Black. You could be white. Yep. You can be Native. You could be Asian. It doesn't matter what you are. Now you got to pay first, last, security, get the credit check. Maybe you have to pay somebody off on the side end.
And no one questions it, right? It's just how it's always been when that hasn't been the case. And I think one of the things too, in terms of like the podcast, it went from like just a marketing tool for Brunch and Budget to a podcast where we explore where personal finance and racial economic inclusion intersect.
Yeah, we got to do more deep dives in that than we would be able to in the classroom. That part that I'm telling you right now, we would basically go through that, talk about how you feel about it, and then we have to move on because we have a lot of things we have to discuss.
Graduate, first generation with a professional salary, they're making more money than their parents ever had. So not only were they more likely to have student loan debt, they're also more likely to be supporting other family members. They're less likely to have a history of home ownership in their family. They're less likely to have wealth or a safety net that they could go back to once they graduated. And they became the money person in their family, right? And so I wasn't equipped to talk about how to plan for extended family, how to be able to raise your credit score for not just yourself, but also your parents, right? And also your sister and also your cousin. And, to be able to plan for these emergencies and these like extended financial obligations where I could have two clients who are making the same amount of money, but more often than not, my clients of color just had more necessities because they weren't just their necessities, they were their family's necessities. And so when we really started focusing on this and learning about the racial wealth divide, we found stats and we found the research behind why this exists and the policies and the systemic structures that been put into place to create this. And so a lot of the work that we do at Brunch and Budget and Pocket Change is to really educate people on this, to help them understand how to navigate the systems and also how to build wealth despite this.
You know what? This is something near and dear to my heart, just so you guys know. There is, and I want to go ahead and give a shout out to an attorney that I listened to on a podcast. Her name was Art Steele, Steele. Steele with an E on it. And Art, when I listened to this podcast and she referenced, and I actually just pulled it up while you guys were speaking, there was a Brandeis University, Brandeis, I always say that wrong, I think.
I don't know either.
There was a white paper that they put together called Understanding the Racial Wealth Gap. And I'm looking at it right now. The gist of it, right? And this is why at the core of everything we do, whether it's Epic Services Company or CSI Financial Group, working through the advisor network throughout the country, is bringing to the mass affluent, an underserved demographic, right? People of color, white, wealth, racial gap that was happening is at the core of it is proper estate planning.
Oh,
yes, totally.
So that's why that's our foundational approach is bringing that to the access that, and we've created videos on this. We have marketing around this. We have all this stuff. Everything you guys are talking about, I am like loving because we have to educate, enlighten, and empower the mass affluent demographic that is so underserved. And it's great as a financial advisor to work with high net worth and ultra high net worth, right?
Sure.
But how do you make accessible to the mass affluent marketplace these types of things that can generationally change the trajectory of those households that are, just learning, right? You have this this acronym called Henry's, right?
Yeah.
Rich, right? And you have all of these things, and a lot of it, if you think about it, the number is staggering. Intergenerational wealth. Do you know what the newest number from Cerulli and Associates came out? The intergenerational wealth that's going to be transferred in the next 30 years, 25, 30 years. Do you know what that number is?
I don't know. I want to know.
Take a wild guess.
$100 billion.
Yeah, in total, right?
Yeah, in total.
Yeah, I went with that around 100 billion.
Are you sitting down?
Oh, I'm so terrified.
Oh my gosh.
It's trillions, isn't it?
84 trillion.
84 trillion. That's a lot of wow.
That's a lot of zeros.
$1 trillion of intergenerational wealth 3 months ago.
My goodness.
The point behind it, right, is that if you do not have these types of educational conversations intergenerational, families, right? Family succession planning is what we actually call it, to the mass affluent, they're doomed to fail and they're going to have to start all over again. It's that old saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in three generations. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, we've seen stats based around that. Was it like 70%?
Yeah, 70%. The 70% of families lose their wealth after 2 generations, and 90% of families lose their wealth after 3 is the stat that we've seen too. So just imagining like that much money being lost to who knows, what does that even mean, right? I think is really I really love that you brought up estate planning, because we also had we had a guest on our show who was an estate attorney who like blew our minds.
Shout out to Boma Prega Julius.
Yes, and
although we want to meet Art Steele, I love the name Art. If you're listening, Art Steele, you sound like you're a character in like a novel series, like a John Grisham is writing about you.
I love it. But one of the things that Boma Prega said is that she believes that estate planning is the #1 way to end generational poverty.
100%.
Yeah, because if you spend all of this time accumulating this wealth, and this is the barrier that we run into, especially with our clients of color, is they try to talk to their parents about estate planning, and the various responses that they get are, it's not your business. I don't want to talk about this. We can talk about this later. You can figure it out when I die, right?
Or I just don't have an estate.
I just don't have an estate, right? I don't have enough money. It's too expensive for us to set these documents up. Why would I do that?
One of the things I think that we do and what Brunch and Budget really does is help folks who have been scared out of the financial services industry, has been told that this is not for them. You know, I grew up in the Virgin Islands where straight up the only time we ever heard about a financial advisor is when our only famous person, Tim Duncan, like, big basketball star, got screwed over by a financial advisor. So common sense wisdom was, don't mess with financial advisors. You see what they did, Timmy? They're going to do you dirty too.
Yeah.
Well, let me just give a couple of examples of how, and Tim, I know that we're going a little bit long and then we normally go, and I
just skip the break. Just skip the break. Keep on.
No breaks.
No breaks.
So
I've done that before on my show a couple times. It's no big deal.
I think we may just end up having 2 segments, that we may just talk all about this and then go to the health thing next. I think that's what we're going to do.
Sure. Do it.
So here's a perfect example of it doesn't even matter when it comes to estate planning. It does not even matter the access. So I just read an article today, and then I read an article on that's going to go back to the courts. And stuff. Talk about artists that have been like ruined. There was a very famous artist back in the late 60s, early 70s by the name of Jimi Hendrix. Ever heard of him?
He didn't have an estate plan.
Exactly. So that's the problem. And typically the reason why, and probably why, the shout out you just gave to an estate planning attorney when it comes to estate planning. First of all, listen up, Health and Wealth Podcast listeners, right? And thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. All too often, the problem is we do not understand what estate planning means. And you just brought it up. You brought it up. Let's just break it down to its simplest form.
Mm-hmm.
An estate is simply everything you own. Now, if you own something, what does that mean?
So why don't we just call it the everything you own transfer plan?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
It's just something people can freaking stand. Like, because you have to talk literally at a 5th grade level today, because that's where most of us are at. I mean,
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, well,
I when my friend got diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, it took me like 3 months to just learn how to pronounce that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, and then it's kind of like, wah, 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 wah. And I'm like, I don't understand what they're talking about. It goes over the head, but people don't want to feel dumb. So they just, okay. And they shake their head. Yeah. And then they don't do anything.
Well, so let me ask you guys this question, since you've been giving these educational events and everything, because I've been saying this for a
association kind
yeah,
of thing.
there's
So
the
yeah,
word association. Yeah, and I feel like they're more when people hear the word estate planning with my clients. It's not a word association so much as like you literally like see them shrink away.
You see the gate that they're seeing in their eyes, the big fancy golden gate that they can't get into.
The like mortality like shows up in their face, like their own mortality, their parents' mortality. So there's just like this, especially during COVID, we talked about it so much, and it became, of course, one of our priorities to talk about it, right? Because there was such a need for it. And I think that's been a huge reaction that we've seen, is people really just like not ready to talk about it.
It's heavy. It's heavy. The workshop that we did, that we also did a podcast, but we called it the Morbid Money Hour, where we would talk about all these kind of things, and we tried to be a little fun and snarky about it, but there's only about so much you can do to be like, no, this is about this. And when you talk about artists, you know, it's not just Prince. A lot of people who don't know that Prince's real legacy is not his amazing musical catalog. It's his philanthropic work. Yeah. Prince spent so much money and so much energy helping out youth all around the country who did not have enough money to do more things. And the biggest shame is that all of that stopped. Aretha Franklin, who also died without an estate plan, she was like, if you talk about the 60s and 70s, so many activists were taken care of, bailed out of jail, got their plans and stuff together and funded by Aretha Franklin. So again, that was a huge loss, not just in terms of their creativity, but in the material things they were doing for the world.
The biggest barriers that I've also seen are a lot of folks who are single or don't have kids, who just have a hard time thinking about who they're going to leave their things to and their money to, right? For 2 years sometimes, just to get them to have those conversations with their close friends, right? Just to make that list. I mean, to be honest, we're in the middle of putting together our estate plan. We talked to an attorney last December. He emailed us in February. It is now September. We still have one thing to get to him, and we have not done it. It's hard for everyone.
Well, and talking to your family about it, I mean,
oh my gosh.
We have a thing that we teach to folks about, like, one of the ways to get your estate planning done is to talk to your parents and have them engage in their parent thing to get your thing done. But even then, as you just hear me saying, it becomes messy and unwieldy already.
Yeah.
Well, it's I got to tell you, this is at the heart of everything that we do. Is we launched Epic Services Company to become the estate and legacy planning solution for advisors and their clients.
Wow.
Everything technology, but bringing in the human component, right? So obviously attorneys are part of our entire system, right?
Yeah.
But it's about the access and leveraging the technology that's available to us today. That is the dynamic thing about our entire platform that, offline.
Hey, Carter, I want to interrupt here because it's important, because the whole thing is like, I was a financial advisor before I was a health advisor, right? And that triangle of trust, one part of it was the financial advisor, the CPA for the taxes, and the attorney. And we had to push and motivate and do everything we could to get people to go meet with the attorneys. And nobody likes to go downtown in those big fancy buildings and go up the elevators and pay a lot of money and do a bunch of paperwork. They want to go have pizza and watch the game or go hang out with their friends. They don't want to do this stuff. It's scary. They think they're going to be fleeced. They don't think they have enough money. There's all this BS going in there. Last week was sitting there outside. Is the evening. We're just having a chat. And he's like, when Cody and Kyle, my sons, Cody and Kyle, he goes, when they come up, he goes, I got some stories I want to share with them. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, what do you want to tell them? I tell them this and that. And I was like, well, I said, you can actually record that and we can put it in your estate plan. That's part of the estate plan you play. He's like, well, how we do that? We put that on a cassette tape, you know? And it's just like, you know, he's 82. I'm like, no, we record it digitally. And I finally explained to him how it worked. And so I'm like, you can tell those stories and then we can just upload them in there. And then after you die at any time, the kids can go back and they can listen to your story as many times as they want, Dad. And so it's not just about passing on the money. It's passing on the lessons and the funny stories about maybe how you know, like my grandma, like, you know, went fishing and she yanked the fishing line or took the fishing line and hooked my grandpa's hat and casted my grandpa's hat out into the river. Right. Or the next time hooked him in the ear and was like yanking, trying to go like this. And he's like, ow, ow, ow. You know, those are funny stories. Or maybe they want to say, hey, look, if you ever get your house painted, make sure you get 3 bids. Don't just go with the first person, and get some references. Get at least 3 references on these people. Anytime you get anything done, whether it's auto body work or whatever, and those are important things that might not sound like much, but it could save them thousands of dollars in headaches. And it's an education that they've already gotten burnt, and now they can teach you so you don't get burnt, right? So, and then just all that stuff, your stories can be put into the estate plan that Carter Systems all set up. So I just think that's really cool, because it's not just about, your legacy isn't just the money that's passing, but
we're in all of those things.
I mean, it got lost earlier when folks were like, don't have these drums and we should have dictionaries so that poor people can be wrong about how to spell things.
Yes.
I'm just
we
saying,
go all the way back through history.
We can't be blamed.
Well, everything's changing, guys. It used to be big front porches and everybody would meet and talk, and now it's like little to no front porch, back porch. Everybody hides out. Nobody talks to people anymore.
I just got someone was hipping me to the whole, you used to hang out in the front yard, and what was created, I forget the date, but like when backyards became the model for the suburban home, and how it flipped that one too. Yeah.
Oh my god.
People are losing connection to the human connection. That's a big important
and meeting your neighbors and things like that. So I love the idea, and I feel like just that bringing up that concept will like soften the idea of creating a estate plan, because it's not just about the money. You're totally right. It's about the stories. It's about these traditions. It's about this advice, right?
Well, and that's the legacy you can be proud of. I think a lot of times it feels weird talking about your estate planning or legacy, because if you haven't beaten capitalism, then you feel like you're a loser, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't have anything to pass on to people's. But these stories are a great place to start and be like, no, remember the things that are beautiful that you want to share.
It's another kind of wealth.
Well, so again, thank you, Tim, for sharing that. I went ahead now, enrichers, that's what we call our podcast listeners. You can go in here, but I went ahead for your convenience in the chat box. If you look in there on the right hand side, right, and you're all trying to provide like certain services. So part of what we do with the estate plan is, and we know this already, we know how we pass on our valuables. It's with estate planning and financial planning. But I bought, and you can see the timeline on that page when you scroll down. You can see where the beginning, the infancy stage of a legacy stories and the idea behind it in the first place, where it came about. I believed in it so much that it needed to be part of someone's estate plan, because how do we pass on our values? That's legacy planning with legacy stories. And if you read that timeline, you can see when we purchased it, it's part of the package. It's not just the documents that are created. It's also everything that's in your head and in your heart. When we're no longer here, it dies with you. So if you've not documented that, and we give you a really easy way to onboard all of the clients that come in so that you know how to do this. So Tim, for you, what I'll do is I don't think I did this yet. I have a workflow that like every single day, there's one like little bitty thing that you add inside your legacy stories. And what it does is it sort of conditions you to get in there to start recording all these things. I don't even know where I'd start.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we give you the tools, a systematic way to just little bit by little bit by little bit start recording. There's an app that you can download that you can just get on your phone, boom, hit record, just start talking. And it just all goes into your legacy stories, family story vault. That's what we call it. It's part of your estate planning onboarding process that we've created. end-to-end white glove delivery service of everything that a household would ever need. So anyway, I just wanted to share that little bit of information, not only with the our enrichers who are listening today, but also for you, so you can sort of look a little bit more about that. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. I love that. I would love to check out the system. And for us, you just throw in a beat and then we can start telling our life story. That'll be fun.
We'll just freestyle the whole thing.
That's what I'm saying. Just add that part of it and then we're good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Tim, I know we're going to do just like 2 segments and everything. Do you want to go ahead and?
Sure. All right. Well, I mean, here we are. So good first segment, guys. So what we'll do, we'll take a quick break. When we get back, we'll let these guys ask me anything they want about health. We'll be right back.
Estate planning. What does that even mean? When the inevitable happens for everyone on this planet, your estate plan kicks into action. But first, let's start with what an estate is. An estate is simply everything you own. Now, here's the issue and what needs to be understood when this event occurs. You only have 2 choices on this plan. Number 1, either you plan how your estate gets handed out and distributed to those you leave behind. Or number 2, your state decides who gets everything you own. For the first time ever, you can now take complete and total control of this plan that you've been deprived of for most of your life and generations before you. You can get personalized assistance along the way with a team of specialists whose job it is to make sure you have true peace of mind. It's important to understand that estate planning is a journey, and rest assured that our team will be available to you all along the way and at every step. Welcome to Estate Plan, home of the last estate plan you'll ever need. To learn more, make sure to reach out to your local advisor licensed with us or go to our website for more information.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I'm back with my co-host, Carter Wilcoxson. Again, today in the house, we've got Pam and Dyalekt. And now this is the segment, guys, where we get to flip the script and you guys get to ask me anything you want about health, whether it's your health or a friend's health.
The enemy. I know it seems like a moving target when it comes to your public nutrition, marketing. I don't know, where exactly it comes from, but carbs, right, lately has been the enemy. So
are carbs really that bad is my question.
What kind of carbs you talking about?
Oh. Well, I mean, all I know on that tip is that there are simple carbs
and then complex
carbs. The source carbs? Oh, complex.
Right.
Complex carbs.
Some rap magazine carbs.
Right.
Your simple carbs or complex carbs. And the complex ones are good because they're difficult. They're like a textbook. And the simple ones are bad because they're like a telenovela or a YA book.
Right. Well, the reason I asked that question was just to break people's mindset that the carbs are just like this one thing, even though they are, right? They are a category for a macronutrient, right? But just because there's a category there, it's like, what are you actually eating? Okay, so I'll give you an example. Like, most of what we should be eating is actually carbohydrates. But it's not what people are thinking. Like vegetables as an example, right? And sprouts. How many pounds of sprouts do you guys eat a month or a week?
Not enough. I love sprouts. Sprouts are so tough though because it feels like whenever you buy that box of sprouts, it's like that big thing. You never finish them before they get to like the slimy stuff at the bottom, so it feels discouraging.
Right. So what you would do is like eat them all at once. Right, because they if you chew them up, there's not that much to them. They're very little. So anyway, back to your carb question. The first thing is the reason why
it's like this is how you do it. Actually,
these are that's I guess our next question about what our portions.
Yeah. So the bottom line is like what are most carbs? What people are eating? Like so, if you're eating lasagna or you're having noodles, right, or cereal, good for your body. It starts making formaldehyde. So when you're having this lasagna that's really good, or your kids are eating cereal, they're actually embalming themselves slightly every day.
Y'all eating sherm.
Oh my god!
Remember that old slang term, sherm? That was marijuana dipped in the formaldehyde.
So there's. I'm trying to see where it was. There's a what episode was it? I had Dr. Here it is. I got it here somewhere. Dr. William Davis came on. It was episode 122 of my podcast. You guys might want to watch this because this will freak you out, but get you some good information. The Health Hero Show, Dr. William Davis, the scary truth about wheat and wheat products. So it's not just that gluten's bad. There's these gliadin proteins and some of the stuff I just shared with you. So when you're eating carbs that are genetically modified, right? So it's messing up the plant's internal metabolism, jacking your health. They are grown in nutrient deficient soils. They're hybrid. Then they're processed, right? And then they're cooked at high temperatures and mixed with sugar and yeast and this kind of stuff, salt. Then what ends up happening is you're going to break down your body, right? So you're getting, when you put it in your mouth, you're going to like it because it converts to sugar.
Right, immediately.
That's what's going to happen. So which is acid on the body, which is going to make you look like an old ass fast. Like, so you're going to age much faster than everybody else, and you're going to break down everything in your body. Like everything's going to be breaking down. So that's one of the biggest problems. It's like, it's not that carbs in the macronutrient category are bad. It's what's the subtype? Like, what are you actually eating? Well, most of the stuff is grown in nutrient deficient soils. It's modified by man. It's processed, sprayed with chemicals, messed with, and then they give it to us with some tomato sauce on it and some mushrooms and some hamburger. It's like 100% protein, roughly. It's roughly 10% fat and 80% carbohydrates, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at when human beings put on the most muscle, grow the most, that's from birth to about 1 year. We triple in size. We go from 7 pounds to about 21 pounds. Yeah. So it's massive growth. What's the consistency of breast milk? Well, it's about 6 to 8% high quality proteins, but they're already pre-digested in amino acid form, so there's no labor to convert. The fatty acids are there, so the fat's already pre-digested, no labor on the body to convert, and about 80-90% complex carbohydrates.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that's the diet that they put people on, and that's the diet they've had people win Olympic level gold medals. Somebody that I don't know why we don't hear more about it, but Serena Williams had lupus and she was pretty much done with tennis. I don't know if you heard her tennis career was over. I think she was worth like 40 or 60 million bucks at the time. So she had enough money. She was flying around all the world to the best doctors. She ends up at Dr. Clement's office in Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida. And she's like, why do I feel so good? Everything you're telling me to do is the exact opposite of what everybody else is telling me. And he said, that's why it works. It's the opposite. Like whatever you see on TV, do the opposite. Right, 98% of the time, because it's a bought and paid for system, right? It's a broken system.
Yeah.
And so she goes on, she wins Wimbledon, wins a gold medal after this, right? And then her sister, Venus did this, and then Serena started adopting some of this stuff too. So if I said Serena, I meant Venus Williams.
No, Venus did it first. Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, Venus
was early in their career.
Oh wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Venus did. So she was able to not only heal herself from lupus, but go back in and compete and do what she loved to do, right? While she could. And then Serena adopted some of this stuff too because it worked, right?
Yeah.
And then, like I said, they've had other Olympic level gold medals. So the whole thing about the carb thing is it's not that carbs are bad. It's just what you're eating is bad. Like if you're eating and the first thing is just wheat products. Okay, those are not good. That's just where it's at. So that would be the first thing. If we can just get people off of that and get them onto some other, you just eat lots of vegetables, eat lots of raw organic stuff, buy fresh, buy local, grow your own stuff, and start putting sprouts into your body. Go sprout crazy. Sprouted nuts, sprouted seeds, sprouted grains, sprouted
sprouts. Yeah, there you go. Let's start doing that.
Yeah, thank you for freeing us from the portions thing. Like that's all.
Just eat all the sprouts at once.
Well, and here's the thing, guys, is the reason why people are overeating so much is because there's no nutrition in the food. So your cells are saying, go eat. I need this and that. And then I need nutrients. When you replace when you clean up the gut and replace the nutrients, the hunger cravings go away and you don't eat that much. I don't even eat that much food anymore.
I hear
it's
that.
Crazy, but I function at a high level.
To follow up on this, so talking about the thing that's in the media. So I hear so much about the eat clean thing, right? Eat clean, bro. And it's like the gym bro kind of thing. Is that a thing? Or is that just marketing?
Well, I would have to look into it, but clean food is a good thing. What we're saying about that is what you want to make sure your food is grown in nutrient dense soil. It's not sprayed with pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, larvicides, chemical fertilizers, right? That would be a very basic thing, and you want your food to be fresh. The fresher, the better. That pretty much cleans it up right there. I mean, the other thing you could look at is what are the other inputs, which is water. Where's the water source and that kind of stuff. But we're in a world today where, 74% of the rainwater on this planet has glyphosate in it, which is the main ingredient in Roundup.
Yeah.
Which there's
Yeah, we
commercials
read about
playing
that
right now. It
stuff.
says it gives you lymphoma, cancer, and all other kinds of problems. So
Yeah.
we're in a world today, so it's polluted. So that's why my whole shtick, and that's how Carter and I met, chemical-free body. We're trying to bring awareness to this because it's about education,
Yep.
right? You give them the education, and then give them a go do this, like try that, do that. So I'm all about daily detoxing because it's always daily coming in. So we teach people what to do to keep the stuff out and do the best you can to clean up your inputs to your beautiful biological system. Then you have less burden going in, and you have means to get the stuff out on a daily basis, and you can finally get ahead of the curve, and then you're just going to feel freaking good, right? You're going to have energy.
I love all of this. There's so many interesting things within that. As you're talking about soil and things like that, I have a cursory knowledge of, I don't want to even say understanding about that, but like I get that that's a thing. And when you're looking at this stuff, it's hard to just. People tell you that GMOs are genetically modified things they're the chemically done, or they're also the selective breeding. I've been told that those are indistinguishable from each other.
Right.
Is that, does it matter the way in which they've been manipulated when you're talking about like the way that wheat has been changed? And
Selective breeding would be one category. Maybe you like pick that plant or pick that plant, as long as it was heirloom from nature.
Wasn't as dense in the way.
Right. Yeah. It's man-made. I think it was made in, I know carrots are man-made too. They're like made by some dude in Holland.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, I don't even know the carrot controversy.
Wait, what's the carrot?
Can we write a YA book called The Carrot Controversy?
Probably. I just remember some dude in Holland. I think made carrots. So it's just wild foods are always better. Like dandelions are awesome, yet we spray them all the time because we think they're weeds.
Right, because we think
they're a top 10 herb. They're actually one of the main ingredients in this product. One of our number one sellers, our Green 85, which is like our green juice product.
Wow.
I never understood weeds. Weeds always felt like some weird discrimination. I remember as a kid where they were like,
yeah, they're
these
discriminating.
Plants are good and these plants are bad. And I'll be like,
how did you decide that?
Plants are like, well, these plants will kill. And I'm like, but all the plants are kind of competing. I don't know. So yeah, this is great.
So hold on a second, guys. Carter, we're gonna have to take just a quick break. Justin's gonna have to splice this because my contractor's left and there's some people delivering some stuff. I just got to go tell them where to place something. Okay. And I'll be right back.
Okay.
Sorry, just as we're getting hype about it.
I know.
Getting all geeked out about all this stuff, huh?
Oh yeah. Because this is not our area of expertise, but
but it's like so fast. It's something that I've like looked into a little bit and like I think about a lot. And I had a gluten allergy before I was pregnant, so.
This is the thing. It was not because it really goes along with what he's talking about because you didn't actually have an allergy to gluten, but having glutinous stuff would inflame other allergies. So it was like this tenuous balance.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, okay, what's the deal with carbs? Because I've tried to cut wheat out of my diet just because of my own allergies. But as soon as I had the baby, I was like, oh, wait. I can eat carbs again. I can eat wheat again and bread and not react to it.
And also having a baby, you're like, okay, sometimes just let me get a sandwich.
Sometimes I just need bread.
Yeah, because
Because I am breastfeeding, and that is 80% carbs. I just learned. I didn't even know that.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, but remember, like breastfeeding, like that took over.
That took over, yeah. That just takes over your body.
It does, yeah. No doubt about it. Well,
peace out.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Just tell him. You'll just have to tell him where it's at. Justin, this is the place.
Yeah.
He'll know.
Just go back and cut that little part out right there.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so finishing up, so genetically modified foods is something that you just don't want to do it. And a lot of times people will say, well, that's the only way we can feed the planet. That is absolute BS. That is absolute BS.
My next question.
And it's weird, you see, because they get these two parties doing stuff. They got the right and the left, the Republicans and Democrats, and they have people on the left saying, hey, we have to stop eating meat. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now the people on the right, which I grew up with, Eastern Oregon type folks, they're going to be like, screw you, dude. Like, because you're not taking away my burgers and all the family and the traditions, and there's ranchers and stuff like that. But the reality is that they're using that to polarize us, because the reality is like too much meat consumption is really not that good for the human body. It's very acid and it takes a lot of input. 70% of what we're growing goes to feed animals. that are getting this secondhand. And then a lot of the stuff that they're growing is genetically modified corn, genetically modified soy, and they're feeding it to these animals, and then we're eating it. So we're getting GMO'd secondhand through these animals. They put antibiotics in them and stuff like that. So the whole system is broken. It's not like you can have a little, steak or a hamburger once in a while, but the true cost should be there too. And then people could have to make decisions about that. Because, if you went and bought a $5 hamburger, if you actually look at the true cost, because hamburger meat industry is subsidized by the government, which subsidized means reach in the taxpayer's pocket and take our money to pay something. That's what it means. So we pay our tax dollars so that people can go buy a $5 hamburger, but the true cost of that hamburger is actually $13.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and why aren't they subsidizing broccoli or sprouts? How come they're not subsidizing that? Because it's to take a look at that stuff, and we have to stop going away from nature, and we have to go back to nature and realize that we are nature. That's what it is. We are an extension of nature, because when you die, you're going to go back into the soil. That's where you came from, right?
Yeah.
So we are nature, even though we're walking around. We're part of nature. We're part of this planet, which is part of the universe. I mean, everything's freaking connected. All of us are connected, and the disconnect from nature and natural food sources is the reason why there's so much suffering going on right now. So many levels. I
feel that so much. I mean, just like, this isn't even a question, but more of a confession. I was an adult when I learned that pork was not a white meat. You talk about the advertisement of it all.
Like the other white meat.
Yeah. They give us this other white meat thing.
Yeah.
It's had such a little understanding of these things. And it often feels really hard to get down to it, because there is so much marketing around this. So many so-called experts who will say things that mostly go along with what you're saying. And they're like, be natural. This is what I mean, even the Eat Clean bro, where they're like, be natural, be all fresh. And what I really mean is buy my product. And then you're like, well, what are you saying that's real here?
Yeah. And I feel like, the subsidies thing that you brought up, because my next question was going to be, how do you actually make all of this accessible? Because I think, the huge systemic issues we've seen around food deserts and vegetables that aren't fresh. And the only thing you can afford to get is pastas and breads and sweets and things like that, because that's what's in the grocery stores and that's what's cheapest to make. How do you actually make this equitable and make this kind of eating equitable?
Yeah. How do we get broccoli everywhere? I guess, the advertisements are one thing, but then if you're in an area where all you got are dollar stores and not grocery stores, right, it's going to be hard to access. I hear that.
Yeah, the inner city's been hit hardest, and this is like what Dr. Shiva was talking about. After Martin Luther King, what did we really get from the Civil War or the Civil Rights Movement?
No, we
both.
Similar.
What did we get from either one of those?
Similar situations where people did a lot of sacrifice, and a thing I always like to tell folks is don't think that sacrifices are necessarily good. Sacrifice, if you etymologically, it just means to kill someone, right? You're just killing folks.
Well, his whole point was after Martin Luther King, what was really what do we get? Well, don't use the N word. That was about it, because the reality, that's where it's at. Because the reason why, and all races, inner cities are not getting fresh food and clean water, and so how do we fix that? Well, if we look. We already know how. In the late 1800s, and Carter knows where I'm going with this, there was urine in the streets, there was dead horses and cows in the water, and there was factory workers working 16-hour days. And they fought for the 8-hour workday. So working class people united, rose together again, and started those. It was actually the women's labor movements that started it, and then men joined in too.
Yeah.
Like the mill girls. And you can look up, and then there was Haymarket Square, where 4 Americans were hung for the 8-hour workday, just trying to have 8 hours.
Yep.
That created International Workers' Day, which is May 1st around the world. But now we celebrate Labor Day, which should be celebrated on May 1st, but Reagan changed that to Law Day, so nobody even knows what it is. You see what I'm saying? They're losing our history and stuff like that. But those women fought. And they got that. They started organizing and said, if you don't give us this, and this, we're not going to come to work. We're tired of working 16 hours for slave wages. Our kids are dying literally in the factories. We're getting hurt in the factories. It's unsafe working conditions. Working people united. And those women actually got the plumbers and the electricians and the sanitation workers. And they cleaned up the urine and the feces in the streets. And they got the dead horses and cows out of the water supply. Working class people built infrastructure. So if people in the inner cities ever want to have a chance, there's only one solution. Working people have to unite again one more time and never stop fighting, because the other side's never going to stop. They want power, profits, and control. And we just want truth, freedom, and health. That's it. So you get to decide what you want to do. You're going to set back, and we've gotten lazy. We've gotten lazy since the 1970s. And that's the reason why working people stopped fighting. And then we started losing all of our gains. And it's all mapped out, and you can see it clear as day. So if we're really going to help people get fresh food, we have to focus on infrastructure. And what can you do on the micro level? Well, you can start sprouting at home. That's what you can do. You can do lentils, like red lentils, French lentils, and green lentils, and mung beans, and fenugreek. All these things are top medicines you can grow in your house for pennies with no trays, no dirt. Just need a glass jar. You could even use a plastic jar if you wanted to. And then you could start sprouting at home, and you could have the most nutritious food on the planet that's actually medicinal.
We should totally do
in
that.
your house.
You know me. You know I love a good mung bean.
Yeah. Well,
So-
and if all you need to do is like sprout some beans
You know,
and water.
it's such an interesting
Wow.
thing, because we talk about art and its ability to cause people to make actions and make changes. And a lot of the things you're talking about are stuff that we personally we're into, and we want to hear me being like, oh, I love sprouts. I just don't know what to do with them. We've been socialized and artified into thinking that this stuff is, all the stuff that you're saying is too hard.
Yeah.
It's too much work,
Right.
and then the gains we'll get from it will be minimal, because if we don't do it perfectly, then it's absolutely worthless to us. So I hear you saying, and I feel those, all of
try these things that you're talking about because we've decided, and that's so much of our identity is actually based off people telling us, well, no, you don't know how to do these things. You're right.
Yeah, I would love some mung beans in the house, but I'm nervous about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just that you just order them, and there's always a learning curve, but you basically just soak them in water 6 to 8 hours overnight, rinse them off, drain them really well. There's actually drain racks you can buy to make it easy. So you just rinse them off, tip them upside down, shake them, and put them in the drain rack and walk away, and they'll drain while you don't have to sit there for 5 minutes. They're just done. And then twice a day you rinse them, drain them. And then, on a case of lentils and mung beans and stuff, those things are literally ready to eat in 2.5 days.
Yeah.
Now, the mung beans, you can further grow them out to the full length if you wanted to the Chinese bean sprout is what most people are referred to. Those things are the easiest digestible food on the planet, loaded with zinc, which is a good virus protector because it stops the virus from replicating once it gets into the cell. So many benefits. There's actually countries during wartime, they had everything taken away from them, and they lived literally on only mung beans for a year to 2 years. Their families, that's all they lived on was mung beans. That's how powerful that is, right? And it was funny because they took away a lot of the livestock, the chickens, the pork, and all the pigs and all that stuff. And during that war, all the diseases went down because they had to go eat roots and tubers, and they ate plants. All the disease went back after the war. They brought back the chickens and the goats and stuff. And again, I'm not hammering on it, but the result is so many real life examples. As soon as all the animal foods came back in, not that you can't have a little bit of them.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody can eat more than others. It all depends. Everybody's individual. But then the disease came back. Right, so what's that about? Well, what it tells us, and if you look at the blue zones, the people that live the longest, what are their 4 common traits? We talk about this all the time. Lifelong friends. So people that live to be centurions, the most centurions, these pockets around the world, Loma Linda, California, the Sardinians, the Costa Ricans, the Okinawans, the people have the most centurions, live the longest, 4 common denominators, all the places, lifelong friends, they respect their elders, they eat an 80% plant-based diet or greater, and they move their body daily. Well, there you go, everybody.
Wow.
Recipe for success. So plant-based diet or greater, let's take it to another level. Fresh food, sprouts.
Yep.
We are nature. Every single creature on this planet eats a 100% raw and living food diet, except for human beings. Our food's cooked, processed, irradiated. We're disconnected from it. And if you live in, Brooklyn, then you need to frickin' bring nature back into your kitchen. And you can do it on your countertop and reconnect with your source. It's part of your source. And when you do that, the rest of your life is going to improve because you're lifting up the boat with the water, which is your health, and your relationships improve, relationship with self, your spiritual path, your finances improve. Everything improves when your health is better. And I know that because I've been living the other side of it now from being terrible health. I mean, I had good health growing up, and then it got bad, and then it's got good again.
Yeah.
So I've ran the gamut. And I can tell you that everything in my life has gotten better because my health has gotten better.
I feel that. So after the carrot controversy, then the sequel to In the Wild.
Absolutely. I think in the name of like, you know, getting the work done and like living our purpose and living our mission, I think it is really hard to put yourself first, right? And it is really hard to put your health first, especially like
the pay yourself first thing. You know, we talk about that a lot, but people are like, what do you mean pay yourself first? Like my brain can't even compute that. And it's like that for these things too. Like our relationship with food, similar to our relationship with money. When you were like, yeah, you can eat those meats, you just got to understand what your relationship is with them. And I remember my time where I had to go through that.
Well, and my first thought when you said you can grow your own sprouts, like literally the very first thought I had was like, no, I can't.
You're like, nah.
No. And then you talked about it and I was like, wait, why was that my first thought? Right. And even just like unlearning or like questioning that like mindset and that thought process is a big part of this too.
Well, and with your
literally all you need is bags of seeds and mason jars. Done.
Word.
Right? Yeah.
And is it worth it to you to do that? Just like we ask people about savings, right? Is it worth it to put away a couple of dollars to start building the savings muscle?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. You're investing in your health when you do that. And it's fun and you can get the kids involved and it's a bonding thing for parents. It's like, and then you're actually eating something that you did and it tastes better and it's fresher and you start it's the connection, remembering and bringing you back to where you came from and connecting. It's so powerful, guys. So powerful. It's so simple.
Yes.
That's why a lot of these community gardens are doing so well. And they're starting to do a little more gardens in schools. Well, gardens are good, hard work, you harvest and everything, understanding nature, unbelievable. There's good food there, but it's not 365. It gets cold in Boston. It gets cold in New York, and you can still sprout when it's December. You can have sprouts for, during New Year's.
Year round.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think about a lot is how global all the food stuff is and how we don't eat regionally and we don't eat according to season anymore. And a lot of stuff I just don't even know. It's like, is this local? Is this in season anymore? Because it's been so available.
That's a question that I have actually, because you just mentioned being able to grow sprouts year round, but like how important is it to eat seasonally?
Well, in nature, it's pretty important, right? Yeah. Those fruits are picked 16 to 17 weeks early. They're picked unripened.
Right.
And then they're ripening on big ships and boats on the way. It's all timed out, right? So then it ripens when it comes to you. So what's the big difference, Tim? Well, the difference between something that ripens on the vine naturally, that's picked early and ripens, is that when you eat something that is unripened, fruit or vegetables, it actually steals minerals out of the body and weakens bones and weakens cellular membranes.
Oh my gosh.
So when you're eating a mango out of season that's been shipped, even though it ripened on the way, it was still picked unripe, and you're still, quote unquote, eating an unripe fruit, even though it looks ripened and it tastes freaking good, right?
Yeah.
And there's always that difference. Like I always tell, the easiest example is like eating a vine ripened tomato in the store with a little vines on it, a little section of it, versus going to your grandma's garden, your aunt's garden, and picking up a tomato there and eating it. It's night and day. Everybody knows it's a zillion times better. It's fresh is best. Fresh is best. So if you can't grow it yourself, then start growing sprouts in the house for sure. Everybody grow sprouts. Everybody start growing sprouts. Don't ever look back. Don't buy into the Salmonella and E. coli thing. Just make sure you get the seeds that are clean, and that's important. They're not grown in animal manure. That's important. And then other than that, it'll work. Then go fresh. Go to your farmers markets. Go to your produce manager and say, hey, look, I want this or I want that. And they'll start bringing in anything that's good and healthy that I've asked for. Always explodes on their shelves. Always explodes, and they sell more and more, and then the companies get more and more sales. I've went around to all these grocery stores, all where I've been moving around and doing stuff, and those things are always there, and they grow and they get bigger and bigger sections because people are looking for this stuff more than ever. People are looking because it's not working. The medical model's not working. It's broken. The food system is broken, and people are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're looking for solutions. And they're finding out that, hey, maybe sprouts are a good thing, or maybe I should drink a couple green juices a day, or maybe I should, drink lemon water first thing in the morning and not coffee. And if I'm going to drink coffee, I should wait 90 minutes before I drink it. And it shouldn't be moldy coffee, which most of it is. And acidic, and I should get maybe some shade grown coffee, right? And just like these little differences. And if I'm going to do shade grown coffee, then I should put L-theanine in it to buffer it because it's been stripped out. Right. So like when you drink matcha, L-theanine's in there and the caffeine's in there. So it's naturally buffered and it works great. But coffee's been stripped. So when you learn basic things like this, you can recreate it. You can still have your coffee. I'm not saying.
Oh, was that enough or what? I mean,
that was
more than enough.
To not be too on the nose. We feel very full.
Satiated.
Satiated.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Benjamin Franklin said something. I read one of his old books. It said, "Never eat to dullness or drink to elevation." And I think those things still hold true. Pretty good quote.
Love it.
Yes. One of the better Franklin quotes. Better than the stuff about the swarthy Germans taking over the country.
Awesome. Well, hey, you know what, Pam, Dyalekt, we really appreciate you guys coming on the show and everything. It was awesome. So, hey, enrichers, thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. And to be able to see all of our other amazing guests like Pam and Dyalekt from Brunch and Budget, you can go to their website, brunchandbudget.com. You can check out all the stuff that they do. You can get all of our podcasts at our website at www.thehealthandwealthpodcastshow.com. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or Google. So for my fantastic co-host, Mr. Chemical Free Body, Tim James, I am Carter Wilcoxson, CEO and founder of Epic Services Company. And we just, really, Pam, Dyalekt, you guys were awesome. Thank you for coming on the show today. Hey, enrichers, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Wilcoxson.
And I'm your host, Tim James. And by God, we are committed to helping you guys have fat wallets, flat bellies. So tune in again for another episode and make sure to like, share, and drink a lot of water.
Or beer.
You have just listened to the Health and Wealth Podcast with Carter and Tim.